So this is where I see, in the NBA, uncontested shots. If you look up stats for that, it's really crazy. Like they can stand anywhere on the court and make 60, 70% or more. So let's start in the deep paint again first. This is our highest value. If we can get uncontested deep paint shots, like this is a dunk where nobody's there to stop you. This is a fast break layup when nobody's nearby to contest it, right? And we'll get into the definition of contest in a minute. But uncontested, we're going to make 95%. And the cool thing is about contesting, if you're looking at a defensive standpoint, you're going to cut the percentage in half or just about half anytime you bother the shooter by getting your hand up in their face and bothering them and contesting their shot. And so 95% when there's nobody around drops all the way to 45% when there is somebody contesting. And that's where, on average, the Celtics get 64%. A lot of them are contested, probably more so than uncontested, because you're near the rim and there's a lot of defense hanging around, and Wembanyama's there trying to block everything in sight. And so that drops a lot every time you're contested, but they do get some uncontested. And so it averages out to somewhere in the 65, 64% for the whole season. And then mid range is similar. If you give an NBA player uncontested mid range shot, whether they're off the dribble or off the catch, they're going to score around 70%. They're just that good at shooting. And contested, they're going to drop about in half again, 35%. And again, they're going to get more shots contested than uncontested. And so that average is weighted a little bit lower than halfway between. And that's where they average out to 44%. And again, because it's a 2-point shot, this is the one we don't want to shoot. And why that space is empty between the two. And then we go out to 3-point shots, uncontested. They're still going to shoot about 60%, which if you've ever been in a practice and watched shooters shoot, like when there's nobody nearby and they're just doing practice shots, they make them at an incredible rate. It's crazy to watch. But still, contested, they're going to drop in half. And so that makes it 30% when they're contested. And because there's intense defense, especially as we get into playoff time, the average drops down to 37%. Is what we showed, around the arc, except for their one hot spot. The Celtics averaged only 37%. But again, doing the math, that's still to their advantage to shoot 37% worth 3 instead of shooting 44% worth 2. So let's talk about the math of shot selection. So the average percentage can give you some guidance on what shots you want to take more of. So we just did the deep paint is 64% times 2 points, gave us 1.28. 3-point shots, if we could average 40%, would be times 3 points, 1.2 points per shot. Mid-range, 44% times 2 points is 0.8 points per shot. And this is where we can get into the free throw equivalent. The Celtics are actually doing incredibly well. They're shooting 80% on the season for free throws. And so because they get 2 attempts each time, it's 2 times 80% to get the free throw points per shot value. So assuming they're taking 2 every trip, right? And even if they have an odd number, we can average that out by just doing division. So 80% times 2 points is 1.6 points per possession would be another way to say that. It's like equating it to a 2-point shot, even though they're doing 2 shots one at a time. We are trying to get a apples to apples comparison to a 2-point possession. And so this is why, again, free throws win games, is that every time they foul you, you can get 2 chances at making up the same points. And so this is where I said a minute ago, even if you shoot 50% times 2 points is 1.0, right? And so if you're whatever level you're playing at, like if you're in high school and your team average is 0.8, but when you get fouled, you hit 50% of your shots and you score 1.0 for that possession, you're actually defense is putting you in an advantage situation every time they foul you. And that's even if you're a terrible, terrible free throw shooter at only 50%, right? Most of us are going to be 65, 70, maybe up to 80% by the time we're at a varsity high school level. And so every little bit above 50% that you can improve your free throw shooting is just icing on the cake, where you're punishing that defense every time they foul you because you're more efficient at the free throw line than you could ever be, even for your whole team on average taking a field goal attempt. So let's get into contested versus uncontested, because this is really the biggest differentiator. And this is where you can make a huge jump in your efficiency on offense, as well as your impact on defense, by just understanding how this works. So I broke down a minute ago with my circles, different layers. Players at all levels miss twice as many shots when they're contested as when they're uncontested. 70% uncontested NBA three-point shooter gets down to only 35% in contested shot in a game. 80% mid-range shooter is only 40% in a game. 95% uncontested layup is only 45% in a game. And so the definition I like to use actually came from a mentor I mentioned in the past, Ron Ecker, kind of gave me this idea of just a grading level for really grading our defense, but also calibrating our offense and what shots we're taking. So I call it the 6-foot bubble, basically having 3 different levels of a contest happening. So level 0 is where I see most players. They're a little too far away. They don't think the shooter is a very good shooter, so they give no effort. They don't close the gap. They stay outside the 6-foot bubble with their hands down, no jump, no contest, and the player is pretty much uncontested and gets a free shot and makes it twice as much. Even if they miss one, on average over a whole game, especially over a whole season, they're going to make twice as many shots. Level 1 contest means you're giving a little bit of effort. Maybe you were a little out of position, but you're trying to close the gap. You got your hand up and you're coming at them, but you're probably still outside of 6 feet. Or maybe you were inside of 6 feet, but you were turned around, or you didn't give full effort and your hand was still down. You're kind of in the vicinity bothering them, but they're still getting somewhat of a free shot because you're not close enough to really threaten to block them or contest their vision like we've practiced before on defense. And then a level 2 contest means your hand is up and you're inside 6 feet. Like you are actively trying to distract them, annoy them, put your hand in their vision, potentially even block their shot, or at least get them to perceive you as a threat to blocking their shot. And that's where we see the percentage drop precipitously every time they have a contested shot. And again, they're going to make some of those, but we're playing the probability game. If we continually contest every shot with all of our effort, trying to make everything a level 2, they're going to miss twice as many shots overall over the course of a game, and especially on a bigger sample size over the course of a season. If your whole team is trying to contest shots, you'll see your defense rating go way up, and the other team's field goal percentage and the other team's points per shot value go way down because of just consistently contesting every shot with as much effort as you can and not caring when they make some of them because you have a bigger picture perspective. You are defining success differently, and then therefore you feel in control and you don't care if they hit a big shot in your face. You're going to be there next time and contest it the same anyway. So let me show you what this 0-1-2 contest looks like. Coach Ken and I worked through this to kind of give us an idea. We're going to show level 0. He's there, but he's not trying. His hands stay down. He's kind of just letting me shoot it. And most of the time I'm able to make it. Again, he's a little bit farther away. He doesn't feel like he could get there to block me or contest me, so he doesn't try. His hands are down. And then a level 1, he's going to close a little bit. He's going to try to put his hand up, at least influence me, even if he's not jumping, but he's still outside of 6 feet, so can't really get bothered. Then he's coming at me, level 2. He's trying to close the gap and get up in my face and try to get me to miss by putting some effort into it. And whether his timing is perfect or not, he's trying to close that gap and get his hand up so that he can influence whether I make or miss. And most of the time, just as we saw, I'm going to miss most of the shots when he's there just doing anything he can to distract me. Let's give you the priority list. This is one of my favorite things, favorite points in this course, to deliver this checklist to you and hopefully forever change your thinking. So I've got kind of rounded numbers based on where I think of like a high school level ideal here is what I'm going for. And you can actually measure this for yourself and figure out, where are these numbers for you and kind of self-calibrate where this list should be. So uncontested layup, assuming we're scoring at about 90%, nobody's around, we're going to make a layup most of the time, 1.8 points per shot. That's our golden ideal shot. If we can get uncontested layups, whether that's on fast breaks or that's on back cuts or that's off of screens, however we can get it, if we can get layups with nobody there to contest us, we're going to score the most points possible. Free throws are second because of the factor I already talked through. You get 2 tries at making up the same point value. Whatever you shoot 50% or higher is icing on the cake. Most of us are going to shoot 1.4 or higher because we're a 70%-ish free throw shooter. Uncontested 3-point shot is next. Assuming you can make it about 40% when there's nobody around, it's like a practice shot. Pretty average if you're in 7th, 8th, 9th grade or higher. Uncontested mid-range. So this is where this actually is a useful tool. I think about it like we talked through last week with our shot creation off the dribble. It's the space that you're using, right? So there might be no chance at a catch and shoot 3-pointer that's uncontested, and there's definitely people at the rim that are going to contest if you go all the way to the basket. And so maybe there's a big hole in the defense and you can rise up and get uncontested mid-range shot, and therefore that is a higher value than any of the next shots, which would be contested. So kind of repeat the same list. Contested layup drops in half. We get 0.9 points per shot. Contested 3-point shot, cut in half, makes it 0.6 points per shot. Contested mid-range is like the shot we never want to take if we can possibly help it. This is 0.5 points per shot. This is half of the value we want to be shooting for, which is 1.0. And so my whole approach is addition by subtraction. If you just scratch this shot off your list and never take a contested mid-range shot, your efficiency goes up automatically. You're going to pull it back, maybe shoot the 3 off of a step back or a retreat dribble, or you're going to give it up to a teammate, get it back somewhere else, or maybe retreat dribble and re-attack the basket. You're going to try to find a different way to get a shot off. The only exception to that would be buzzer beater at the end of a shot clock if you're playing 3x3, or it's the end of the game and you have to hit a shot in order to keep the game going, whether you're tying it or winning the game. Contested mid-range should only be taken if absolutely necessary. And again, if you just scratch that off your list and never take another mid-range contested shot the rest of your life, your whole scoring efficiency will go way, way up. So this brings us to some interesting choices. So this is where it starts to apply to decision-making in a big way. If we have the choice of a contested layup, my favorite scenario here is after a rebound, because everybody says go straight up, and you might be contested in 5 different ways by your teammates in your way and 4 defenders. Who knows what's going on in the paint, but it's a mess most of the time. And so you're going to probably get the contested percentage, you're going to get 0.9 points per shot. Or if you kick it out to a 3-point shooter that's wide open, they might be able to get 1.05 points per shot, right? So they're a little bit lower percentage. They're not a 40% shooter, they're a 35% shooter, but they're the best shooter on your team, and you have a contested layup that's 2 feet from the basket but contested versus a wide open 3-point shooter that's uncontested. We want to take this every time we get the chance. So that's where I get to rebounding and putbacks. Is like, if it's one-on-one, I'll take it. I'll go at the guy. Maybe I'll draw a foul, but I'll be pretty sure I'm going to score it. If it's a double team or there's just a mess of people in the way, that means my shooter's open. If I can just find him, we're going to get a better shot. And again, if we scratch off the contested shot, even if he doesn't take this wide open 3, but we kick it out, we reset our offense, we come up with a different shot, any kind of shot that's uncontested, we're going to be better off. So then for yourself on a catch, should you shoot the uncontested 3-point shot or drive to a contested layup? And this is where our order of operations comes up, where we've played a lot off the catch one-on-one. Closeout is we want to shoot the uncontested 3. If we can shoot it before the defense is there, there's no contest in our face, that's the best shot we're going to get. driving into a contested layup throws a lot more variables in our way where, we're going to be contested. We might be bumped. We might get fouled, but it not be called. And, putting less things in our control. So we want to take uncontested shots any chance we get it. First shot available that's uncontested is usually the best shot. And then should we shoot a mid-range contested jumper or reset the offense, right? And I kind of gave away the answer already for this one, but if you're about to shoot a mid-range contested shot in that long 2-point range, the no man's land on the Celtics shot chart, you could just pull back, retreat, dribble, reset the offense, and find a better shot. So again, scratch that off your list to have addition by subtraction for your efficiency. All right, summarizing, define your own success. This has kind of 2 layers of meaning, like I talked about. Both in basketball, figure out how to measure your success so that you have control. And in general, in your life, look at what everyone else is doing, what all the expectations are out there that are being put on you from other people, and decide intentionally if you're going to use those for how you measure success for yourself, or if you're going to come up with your own and ignore what everybody else says and focus on what means success to you, what fulfills you. Memorize points per shot and use it. Use it for yourself. You could use it for your team. You could measure yourself over one game or one tournament, over a whole season, and over your whole career. Like I really like doing this with players from year to year. So you could look at, hey, my 7th grade year, I scored 0.2 points per shot, right? I was terrible. And my 8th grade year, I scored 0.4. And my freshman year, I scored 0.6. And like you can track yourself, track your gains as we've talked about in the past. Instead of looking at the gap like, oh, I'm not at 1.0, I'm not an NBA Celtics level yet. Look at where was I yesterday? And just by changing my thinking, not really changing much about my technique or my athleticism, how can I progress that? What has changed over a period of time? It can be pretty cool. And then lastly, most importantly, is be selective with your shots. Eliminate the habit of taking bad shots is really the biggest change you can make. By not taking any more contested mid-range, you're going to become a more efficient scorer. That's it. I know this was a long one. I'm probably going to break it into 2 chunks because it's a lot to digest, a lot of basketball math. But I look forward to talking through this and actually using this as we're on the court and scoring games and discussing efficiency over the next couple of weeks. I'll see you on the court.